kuja pamoja tuunge ule mrengo ambao utaitwa NASA, National Super Alliance, ili yule ameiba dawa ya hospitali anaswe, yule ameiba pesa the National Youth Service anaswe.
Right, Amani National Congress Party leader Musalia Mudavadi has emerged as the main champion of an opposition super alliance, so-called NASA as he said it, to take on Jubilee in next year's polls. But is NASA just a creation of Musalia Mudavadi, or joint opposition, or a joint opposition idea? He's our guest in studio tonight, Musalia Mudavadi. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you.
So the big question tonight, we are asking you, do you think NASA can be a uniting force of the opposition ahead of the 2017 general election? Talk to us, 22422. You can text us on Twitter using the hashtag The Big Question. We'll take a look at a few of your tweets now. Anangwe says, keep your eyes open. NASA is real, it is growing, it is a salvation from corruption and nepotism. Karugu Muredi, NASA is a bad sale already. The question is how 4 guys will divide 2 positions. We'll ask him that. I am Tushabe. Okay, yes, it can be a uniting force, but to what end? I don't see victory for them. Edward Okabi says if the opposition leaders unite and field one candidate, Jubilee will lose 2017 elections by noon of the 7th of August 2017. And Nathan Aurora says no, hard for all of them to agree on a single presidential candidate, as all are ambitious. Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, thank you again for making time for us. First, before we answer those questions, you can see them on Twitter. What is the idea behind this super alliance, the NASA as you call it? What is the driving force behind it?
Well, NASA, the National Super Alliance, is really an acronym for the longer version of National Super Alliance. So if you break it down, NASA becomes a suitable acronym.
Yeah.
Now, the driving force behind this is really the people seeing and realizing that the 4 years or so that we have had of the Jubilee government are riddled with a lot of misrule. And therefore, there's been growing resentment amongst the Kenyan people that we cannot afford to go and have another 5 years with this approach to governance. So, when we talk about NASA, we want to talk about something broader than just the normal political coalitions that we have had in the past in this country. We want to look at a situation where there is a convergence of many players, many actors in this country. And here we are talking of a coalition that will embrace political parties, but will also go beyond that, become broader, and embrace even trade unionism. There's an example in South Africa where ANC has worked very closely with COSATU. We will be able to embrace civil society. We should be able to embrace church leadership, the business community. So that when we are talking of a super alliance, it is a super alliance in the sense that it goes beyond the normal political parties just getting together in the normal traditional coalition.
Right.
Now, I say this, that the sectoral spectrum is so important, you know, whether they are student organizations, whether they are cooperative societies, people are feeling the weight of misrule under the Jubilee government.
Right.
And this is where the NASA comes into play.
Right, I'm coming into, I'll ask you, I mean, whether what strides you've made already, but first, has it been registered as a political outfit? We gather that the name has already been deposited at the register of political parties. Is that for a fact?
Yes, I'll come clean on this. That as ANC, we have indeed reserved the name of the register of political parties.
Right.
That communication we are holding. And
so
we are not and we are not holding it as ANC for the sake of ANC. We are saying that this is an asset that is available for the entire opposition.
Right.
Yes.
So far, and that's what I was asking. I mean, you've registered it as a coalition, as a party?
We have reserved the name. And when you reserve, we have reserved the name. But the principles around NASA is that it will be a coalition.
At the end of the day?
At the end of the day.
Okay. You talk about convergence of issues and of people who want change. That's what you want. I mean, in 2017. I'll read one text here that will form my question. David Ngure in Langata says, Musalia, why are you gambling with alliances knowing you don't have the numbers to bargain? The question here being, in 2013, you were a presidential candidate. Most of these people you still want to work with now, I presume, are the same people you could not work with in 2013. What changes? Is it about you knowing you cannot get the requisite numbers and therefore trying to get a coalition?
I think the gentleman is missing the point. It's not about having numbers to bargain. I think the core principles here is that, first of all, let's figure out, do we have some convergence from the Kenyan people that the economy is being mishandled, that corruption has run away and it's not being checked, that we are seeing a lot of impunity beginning to emerge in the country.
Right.
Poverty is beginning to bite again. Inflation is on the rise. So if these factors are being seen, then that becomes the first focal point. Now, once we are clear on that kind of focal point, then that is the basis of the platform to move forward and push for good governance in this country. Now, when you talk about, do you have the numbers to bargain, here you're just simply talking about somebody believing that politics is about just going there and saying, I want this share and I want that share. That is not what we are looking for here. We are looking for equality. But
why some like those may be concerned is because it's the same kind of players that were there before. For example, in 2013, you were on record, you know, saying you could not work with ODM then because the party was undemocratic.
That is way back, right?
Right.
Isn't
so
it?
What has changed now that you're willing to work with?
I think
Chord coalition with Kalonzo.
A lot of things in politics. Let's also face it, that issues change, dynamics change. All right. And there's nothing wrong in me saying at one particular time that I may not work with you.
Yeah.
But if I see that there's some measure of reform that has occurred in your approach to things, then yes, we can work together. This is not about a personalization of issues. It's a question of being able to see and work for what is right.
Depending on whoever, it doesn't matter who you work with at the end of the day.
Yes.
So would you be willing, again, I know we asked you, and you've been asked this several times, but then would you be willing to work with Jubilee at any point?
At this particular time, let me make it very clear. Jubilee has soiled themselves so seriously. They need to go through a lot of soul searching. And that is why the country is very clear that they need a change.
Okay, you have been quoted as saying, I'll go back to that issue, 2017 will be the year when things will change. We are talking, I'm quoting you, NASA is growing. We will use it to get rid of Jubilee and stop its leaders from stealing Kenyan money. We'll use NASA to catch the thieves. You've said that already. Saying again, anybody who will be outside NASA will be part of Jubilee. They are the people we want to eject from office because they're stealing from Kenyans. Is your desire to take on Jubilee like this triggered by the fact that the leadership changed you in 2013?
No, I think that is way beyond. I'm not even, if you read that and you quote me, I'm not even referring to 2013. I'm referring to the performance of the Jubilee government.
Okay. All right, okay. I'll ask you another question here and use a tweet again. I have that question, but we have here, his name, David Ngaru, right, on Twitter says, it's only Honorable Mudavadi singing that song that is about NASA. The rest are not interested. In fact, you were in Bomet the other day, Isaac Ruto's homecoming. You were there. You were the only one who spoke about this NASA. We've heard others saying, like Senator James Orengo over the weekend, where you are saying Mudavadi is working with CORD. No mention again of NASA. Is it you only? Have you talked to...
Why is it generating a lot of excitement? Why do you think I'm in the studio here? It's because I'm not the only one talking about NASA.
Who are you talking to?
There are so many other people talking about NASA. Let me make that very clear.
Okay.
Secondly, NASA is a concept. We are building a process of unity. Why shy away? Is it because Musalia has talked about it a little more? Or what would be the reason for that? Even if they wanted to have another acronym, they can use another acronym. So let us be a little more serious here. That the issue is that we are talking about the principles that are forming the base of NASA. And I can tell you this, that when I was in Bomet, and even when I was with Orengo,
yes.
As we sat, they had very complimentary remarks to make about the need for unity and the need to have a super alliance.
So have you talked to some of these leaders, party leaders? For example, have you spoken to Raila Odinga about it? Have you spoken to Kalonzo Musyoka about NASA or coming together?
Yes, we have.
What has been the...
I can tell you for free that Raila supports the need and the desire to have a united front. And he can take this to the bank. He has been very supportive even over the fact that we have reserved the name.
Of NASA?
Yes.
So he's endorsing it?
Well, you'll ask him that question. But I can tell you in terms of...
But you've spoken to him, is he endorsing it or not?
In terms of the principle, in terms of the need to have a super alliance, I can tell you that it's an idea that he supports.
Kalonzo Musyoka, for instance, has been quoted saying he has not had any discussion about NASA. He's not...
He has had the word NASA.
He has not had any discussions with you or anybody else?
We were together in Bomet, and he had me speak about it. And when I was going to sit down, he shook my hand and I shook it. I reciprocated. And he said, I think you have made a good point.
So you have not really discussed it with him yet?
But we did agree that we're going to follow up with a cup of coffee.
Okay. Yeah. CORD, we know, I mean, you've seen there's a major headache in CORD when it comes to picking a presidential candidate. Add Musalia Mudavadi. You've seen the tweets there, and I can read them again, and a lot of text. Add Musalia Mudavadi tweet and becomes a major migraine for the opposition. Like here, you'll have somebody say no about NASA and whether it will work. It's hard for all of them to agree on a single presidential candidate, as all are ambitious. How do you work around that?
My brother, there is nothing wrong in being ambitious. Okay? It's perfectly all right. Whether you are in business, whether you are in the media world, whether you are in politics, there's absolutely nothing wrong in being ambitious. In fact, ambition is what drives economies, what drives the countries. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. What is key is how we manage that ambition.
How do you manage it?
And all I can tell you is this. If you are to ask Musalia Mudavadi, Musalia Mudavadi has in the past been able to cede ground and to even say, I don't have to be there, somebody else can be there. I've shown this.
Will you be willing to do that again?
So there's absolutely nothing wrong if it is absolutely necessary that we cede. We can do that. But it's a process. We are talking, and eventually we'll have to manage the egos around politicians. But let us not criminalize ambition.
Right. The question again still stands. Are you willing to drop your presidential ambitions for any of the other opposition leaders?
Let me tell you, NASA is bigger than any individual. NASA is, the concept is bigger than Musalia. And if it was a situation where it is absolutely necessary that is the sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice that one can make, then as a Kenyan I would say yes, I can do that if it is what it's going to take to provide good governance in this country.
Such has happened before, and we've seen fallouts when it comes to nominations, especially of the presidential candidate level. How important is it, do you think, for you and for all the others that you may bring on board, that only one, the opposition, the whole of the opposition here in 2017 fields one candidate? How important is it to you? And how do you manage a fallout?
Well, in any circumstance there would always be competition, and there will be those who will be disappointed and happy. But I can tell you this: if, and I hope we can eventually get there, if we have one opposition candidate, then clearly we'll have galvanized the country and we'll have primed up the country for change. And all I can tell you is that whether it is me, whether it is Raila, Kalonzo, or Weta, or anybody else,
who are all saying they have to be on the ballot paper.
These are competent Kenyans. And if through a process that is mutually acceptable, eventually there's a process that says maybe NASA is now the vehicle, it has been broadened, and then a single candidate emerges through a process that is acceptable and that can hold the other opposition members together, then we will have made a major step. Unity is critical.
Again, that's fine, and all the best with that. But There have been fallouts before. How do you manage such fallouts? You, for example, have been a victim of betrayal and such memorandum of understandings in the past. How do you ensure they are credible and all the agreements that are made are very credible and you stem any kind of fallout?
That is why there must be serious discussions. That is why there must be trust, and all the cards are put on the table. So that if we are going to go into that kind of negotiation, everybody knows from the word go that these are the cards. That is absolutely important. Now, let me tell you this. Betrayal is as old as the times of Jesus and before. All right? So there will always be that kind of possibility.
Right.
But we must not live in fear in pushing forward good ideas because we believe somebody somewhere may have betrayed the other. I think what is important is to soldier on for the common good. And I can tell you that the idea of having a broad-based coalition, and NASA seems to be the best acronym for the time being, unless somebody can put another one on the table. The message I'm putting across is that let us embrace the idea, let us have the structured discussions. We have been having informal discussions with some of the various players, whether in the civil society, whether within the religious groups, whether with some of them being the labor movement.
Right.
So these informal discussions are going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
My question then to you would be, at the end of the day, we are about 10 months, I think, or they're about to the election. CORD coalition, I mean, some in the CORD coalition, which is forms a big part of the opposition, that you agree, are already talking about having the presidential candidate should be decided by December. Some are saying February, some are saying March, depending on the party that one belongs to. Would you want, as NASA, to wait for that to happen first, for CORD to have decide who should be their flag bearer before NASA now, or would you want all this to be done before we
I think we should move concurrently. I mean, if CORD decide to have a process and they nominate one of their own, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Because when we talk about NASA, we are talking about a super alliance. We are talking about going beyond the current coalitions and the current political parties. This is the message that is being missed out.
So it should happen before all these other things are done.
If it can happen, it would be good for CORD. If it does not happen, it does not negate. Either way, it does not negate the need to have a super alliance.
But your preference would be that it happens before individual parties and coalitions decide.
I cannot make a preference for CORD. I think CORD.
But you can make a preference for NASA. What you envision.
But what I envision is that NASA should be this unifying body for the entire opposition. Let us look at it that it's the common man, the Mwananchi. NASA is about the aspirations of Wanjiku. NASA is about the aspirations of Odongo. NASA is about the aspirations of Kimalat and so forth at the grassroots level. People who are feeling the weight of an economy that is being mismanaged.
Okay.
All right?
All right. So, okay, finally then, 2017 coming, August 8th, when would you want this coalition you have in mind to have said, this is our presidential candidate, this is our deputy presidential candidate?
We will be guided primarily by the timetable of the IEBC and the countdown to elections. But I can tell you that what is happening in the country is not new. If you follow the history of when NAC came into power, into formation, you will recall that NAC literally just caught fire around the month of September.
Yeah.
And the elections were in December. And within the 3 months or so, the entire country at that time had gelled up to the idea of NAC.
Okay, very briefly, I want you to ask one question, because some are saying here, like on Twitter, we have Changailo saying NASA factor should be reality but not street talk for corruption to be kicked permanently out of the country. I'll ask you that question of corruption, because we can talk about everything, because we need to know why you really are converging with people you were not converging with before in 2013. two very quick questions. Both Wetangula and yourself are in the Western Kenya, or to be specific, the Luhya vote. And you've talked about it before, the need to have it unified. Any chance you have discussed with him on how to unite the Luhya vote?
At least we've had two sessions with him on this particular issue. And I'll be honest, I've worked with Wetangula much earlier,
right,
in previous parliaments. So it would not be difficult to extend our dialogue as and when it is necessary. But let me put it this way. There's absolutely nothing wrong, as I said, in having ambition and expressing ambition.
Okay.
There is nothing wrong. In fact, I answered the Law Society of Kenya this very question
right.
A few days ago when I was there speaking to them at the Rift Valley about NASA and other things about this country. And I told them that it's about time the people of Western Kenya were given a break by other Kenyans. Because in the last election, in the build-up to the election, Uhuru was a candidate. He's from Central. His birthplace is in Central Kenya. So was Paul Mwite. So was Peter Kenneth, and so was Martha Karua. But these people never went into the boardroom to say that they're going to emerge with one candidate from that particular community.
Right.
The voters in that place looked at their sons and daughters and they decided.
Right.
Now, many people also forget that at one time Orengo stood against Raila under the SDP ticket. Now, you would not have said that because Orengo had stood against Raila that the community is divided. Neither can you say that because there were 4 candidates from Central Kenya, the community is divided. Even and this holds for other areas
right.
But so we must allow for space, political space, for people to move out. But what is important?
But it's because the leaders of Western Kenya keep talking about this unity.
Well, it's dead as a dodo. As far as I'm concerned, if you keep on bringing that discussion, it does not help. I have more faith in the voter of Western Kenya.
All right.
The voter of Western Kenya is not an idiot. I think they have the capacity to assess the potential candidates on the table and make their decision.
Okay.
And then we respect it.
Are you working with KANU and KANU leaders? They committed to NASA. We saw Gideon Moi the other day. He was not really committed. I mean, he was not really direct in saying NASA will work and they will work with NASA. He talked about it, about unity. But then again, we see other leaders in KANU, for example, Senator Lonyangapuo and the rest, saying people should support KANU like he's going for the governor's seat in Pokot.
Yes.
But then he says, you are free to vote for President Kenyatta.
Well, let me tell you this, what a coincidence. I was with Lonyangapuo in Marakwet. We attended the same function. He came in with Pogisho. First of all, the reality is this. KANU did not dissolve. All right? And I commend them for that. That they did not dissolve like other parties that have now been vanquished. And there are a lot of regrets in certain quarters, but it's water under the bridge for those who have come to the reality. KANU stood firm, and KANU is a party that is gaining a lot of ground, and it's reshaping itself.
Okay.
We would like to encourage them to do that. I would like to encourage them to do that. And my conversation with Gideon or some of his party members has been that they have an opportunity because this business of assuming that people are monolithic must be dealt with and vanquished from our minds. So I support a strong KANU, and Gideon is not averse to the idea of a strong opposition platform or unity. He would have a major role to play in improving the governance of this country. And on the other hand, when we were in Bomet, where Isaac Ruto was having his prayers, the ground there was very clear, a mammoth crowd, and they were very clear that they are embracing Chama Cha Mashinani, which is the party fronted by Bomet.
Okay.
And the message there was that it is not about people being herded into political parties. You can still express your position, work on development issues, and this is why I was able to connect with those people
Right.
when I talked about NASA.
Right. You've served in the Kenyan government before. Previous governments all have had their share of, corruption. Currently, Jubilee is grappling with that issue. And many are asking why the convergence, whether it's really about Kenyans. And I'll ask you that one question. We don't really have much time. Corruption. A lot has been done, changing institutions, making institutions strong, having the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, all these things that are done. Is there any one thing that you think can really help Kenya as regards to corruption, or you can do as Mudavadi or even as NASA? What do you have in mind? What can you do?
I think
very briefly.
Actually there are so many things. One, respect the institutions that are there, all right, and make sure they function. What we have seen is a lot of interference in terms of the independence of the institutions that are supposed to be dealing with corruption. Let me give you a classic example: the Office of the Auditor General. He is constantly underfunded.
Okay.
He is constantly denied the opportunity to look at certain things.
Right. Constantly, you put it.
Yes, yeah. Constantly. And he was even being ridiculed as to why he wanted to make a trip to go and seek some verification on an aspect about the Eurobond. Now, that is not a good sign. All right. In the county, even now, that's at the national level. We are seeing strange things happening in Parliament. Ironically, I met some of the members of the Health Committee when they went to visit these containers.
Yes.
And surprisingly, they had a divergent view when both of them are looking at a container, and one would say it's empty and the other says no, it has been equipped.
Okay. With due respect, with due respect to what you're saying, all these things have happened. People have tried to strengthen institutions. Things still don't work. Is there this one magic thing you're thinking about
now,
as ANC or NASA?
the other thing that we would say about NASA, and I've talked about that, is we must also figure out and ask ourselves, is the model we have for fighting corruption correct? Is it correct? And that is a debate I may not answer fully now, but I have some views that we may need to relook at our model
of fighting
of some of the institutions that are fighting corruption.
All right. Abdinur Ali finally on Twitter says, this NASA has no good manifesto. They want to change the constitution for them to get positions for all. This has been talked about. There's been murmurs about this. And why, if all these people come together, well, we'll see the constitution being changed and having even a parliamentary system so that we can create positions for most of these party leaders that are in the position. Do you have such plans?
I think let's put it this way. Let us not blind ourselves. The fact of the matter is that the current structure of the constitution, as it stands today, as much as it's the constitution we voted in 2010, the reality is that the executive is detached from the people.
So that's something you'd want to do?
Yes, we need to look at that as the Kenyans.
Okay.
The executive is detached from Parliament. Ministers are not accountable to Parliament in the serious way that they should be. Clearly, if we are to continue on that basis, we will see people then trying to seek a situation where they continuously want to distance themselves from accountability.
Okay.
And therefore, the need to look at whether this the current establishment provides an opportunity for cohesiveness and for proper integration is important. And let's not cheat ourselves. Kenyans also want to feel that there is equitable distribution of not just resources, but also the institution of governance. All right, we'll have to leave it at that for now. We'll keep talking about this, of course, as we get closer to the election. But thank you so much, Honorable Mudavadi, for making time for us on the big question tonight. Thank you so much. Keep talking to us on Twitter. The hashtag is the big question. Also text us on 22422. We are asking you tonight, do you think NASA, the National Super Alliance, can be a uniting force for the opposition ahead of the 2017 general election? We'll be back after this break.